All right, let's dive into one of the greats, Geoffrey Chaucer's The Canterbury Tales. Now, on the surface, it's about a bunch of people going on a holy pilgrimage. But what's really going on here? Chaucer turns this simple trip into this incredible stage for one of the sharpest social critiques you'll ever read. He's basically putting his entire world on trial.
So that leads us to the big question we're tackling today. How on earth did one poet, writing way back in the 14th century, pull this off? How did he manage to put his entire society on trial and just systematically unmask all of its hypocrisy and corruption? That's what we're going to figure out.
Okay, so to really get what Chaucer's doing, we've got to understand the world he was pushing back against. See, on paper, 14th century society looked like this perfectly ordered system. I mean, it had a place for everyone, and everyone was supposed to know their place. Tidy, right?
This whole structure was called the Three Estates. And people believed it was, divinely ordered, sent straight from God. It was broken down into three simple groups. You had those who pray, that's the clergy, then those who fight, the nobility, and finally, those who labor, the peasantry. So one group prays for your soul, another protects your body, and the last one feeds you. It sounds simple, it's definitely rigid, and in theory, it was supposed to be perfect.
Now Chaucer gives us one character who actually lives up to this ideal, the knight. He's kind of Chaucer's moral compass, the benchmark for everyone else. This guy has fought in 15 deadly battles, not for personal glory, but for his faith. And Chaucer describes him as being as meek as a maid. He is the system working exactly as it should. So keep this guy in your mind, because trust me, almost no one else is going to measure up.
All right, now for the fun part. The unmasking begins, and Chaucer takes his first shot at the group he seems to think is the most corrupt of all. The clergy, those who pray. Their failure, in his eyes, was just the worst. I mean, they were tasked with saving everyone's souls, but they seemed way more interested in saving up their own money.
So let's start with the prioress. Okay, a nun is supposed to be humble, right? Devoted to God. Well, not Madame Eglantine. She's completely obsessed with performing the role of a high society lady. Her hypocrisy isn't really about greed, it's all about social climbing.
And you can see just how she puts on this performance. Look at these details. Her table manners are ridiculously dainty. She speaks French, but it's this kind of wannabe Parisian French she learned near London. She cries her eyes out if a mouse gets caught in a trap, but doesn't shed a tear for the starving poor. And get this, she wears a brooch that says, "Love conquers all, amor vincit omnia," which sounds nice, but it's pointing to courtly romance, not the love of God. It's just a total betrayal of everything she's supposed to stand for.
Okay, so if the prioress is being subtly hypocritical, the pardoner is on a whole other level. This guy is a straight-up professional con man, and he absolutely loves it. His job is to go around selling papal indulgences, get-out-of-sin-free cards, basically, and holy relics. But in reality, he's a master of fraud, and he uses his holy office as a weapon to make himself rich.
And you don't have to take my word for it. The pardoner tells us his motive himself, in what has to be one of the most chilling confessions in all of literature. He says, "My principal intent is for to win, and nothing for correction of sin," which basically means, my only goal here is to make money. I couldn't care less about correcting sin. He literally brags about selling pig bones and passing them off as saints' relics. The ultimate irony? This guy, who is the living, breathing embodiment of greed, gives this brilliant sermon against, you guessed it, the sin of greed.
This whole method of setting up an ideal and then knocking it down, it doesn't stop with the clergy. Chaucer does the exact same thing with another huge topic, love. He uses his characters' stories to pick apart social conventions. First, he gives us this perfect aristocratic ideal of courtly love, and then he just immediately tears it all down. So first up, the ideal. Who else but our moral benchmark, the knight, tells a tale that's perfectly suited to his noble status. It's this big, epic story set in ancient Athens. You've got two noble cousins who fall hopelessly in love with a princess they can only see from their prison window. Their love is all about formal suffering, big philosophical debates, and a giant tournament. It's love as this high-minded, noble, tragic quest.
But then, the moment the knight finishes his beautiful story, the drunken miller literally shoves his way to the front to tell his tale, and just like that, he completely shatters that noble illusion. The miller's version of a love story is, well, it's a crude, physical, and absolutely hilarious mess of lust and practical jokes.
And this table just lays out the parody perfectly. Look at this. The knight's grand ancient Athens? It gets replaced by a tiny cramped shop in Oxford. The two noble cousins? They're replaced by a clever student and a fussy clerk. And the goal? Forget distant idealized devotion. The goal here is immediate physical conquest. The Miller just takes every single element of the fancy courtly romance and flips it on its head. He grounds love not in some high-minded ideal, but in the messy, immediate, and frankly embarrassing things people do.
And this technique of setting up a debate doesn't stop there. It gets applied to one of Chaucer's favorite themes, the institution of marriage. Yup, this pilgrimage turns into a fierce battleground over gender roles and who holds the power inside a marriage.
The whole argument really boils down to this one Middle English word, maestri. It means mastery, or sovereignty, control, basically. And the central question is just, who should have it in a marriage? The husband or the wife?
So Chaucer gives us two totally extreme positions on this. First, you've got the one and only wife of Bath. I mean, she is unforgettable. And drawing on her extensive experience with 5 husbands, she argues that what women want most of all is total control over their husbands. Then, in the complete opposite corner, you have the clerk. He tells this story about a woman named Griselda, a wife who is so perfectly patient and obedient that she puts up with the most unimaginable cruelty from her husband without ever saying a word.
So what's the answer? Total dominance or complete submission? Well, Chaucer seems to suggest there's a third option. He gives it to us in the Franklin's Tale. In this story, a husband and wife agree to a partnership. He gets to keep up the public appearance of being the boss, but in private, they're equals. They treat each other with something called gentile, which really means a nobility of spirit, of character. So for Chaucer, the best marriage isn't a power struggle at all. It's a partnership built on mutual respect. Okay, so we've seen him unmask the clergy. We've seen him dissect love and marriage. So what's the final verdict? What is Chaucer's judgment on his entire society? Let's pull all these threads together.
And yeah, the verdict is pretty harsh. The clergy, the ones who are supposed to be the moral core of society, they're completely consumed by greed and vanity. The nobility, that's a fading ideal. Our perfect knight is the exception. He's definitely not the rule. Then you've got this new rising middle class, and they are driven by pure, raw economic ambition. And the lower class, they bring this disruptive, chaotic energy that feels like it could just topple the whole system.
But Chaucer saves his most powerful punch for the failed leadership of the church, and he delivers it through the mouth of the one truly good religious character in the whole group, the humble parson. He asks this absolutely devastating question, that if gold ruste, what shall iron do? Think about that. If gold can rust, what hope is there for iron? In other words, if the spiritual leaders, the gold, are corrupt, what chance do the common people, the iron, even have?
And all of this leaves us with Chaucer's final, ultimate question. And it's a question that really just dismantles the entire social structure of his world. By showing us a truly noble knight, a disgustingly corrupt partner, and a genuinely good plowman, he forces us to ask a tough question. Is real nobility, that true gentilesse, something you're just born into, or is it all about how you actually behave, how you choose to live your life? That's the trial Chaucer puts us all on. And you know what? It feels just as relevant today as it must have over 600 years ago.